and they have a challenging job. And then there's people like us who have the luxury of saying, we don't care about performance, we want to do our best to get it right. So, what are the real goals of Mame? This is my view on the goals of Mame. Now, there's 100 people who work on this project. We haven't officially stated all our goals, so they probably disagree with me, but this is from my perspective. Number one is we want to document the hardware. Now, a lot of people say, where's your document? You just write a bunch of source code. And yes, that's true. One thing I've learned is that keeping documentation in sync with source code is nearly impossible. The best proof that your documentation is right is, does this code work? So you can argue that we can spend a lot of time trying to write a document to say, here's how this stuff works. Or you can say, yeah, it's in the source code. It may not be the most user-friendly way of getting at it, but if we do a good job, if we architect the software system well enough to describe the hardware in a way that is somewhat understandable, then I think we've done a good job. And so that's partly why I think it's good to have a good architecture, a software architecture, and that appeals to software engineering need. Another goal that I feel Mame has is it provides a database of known good parts. So inside this giant program is the CRC and SHA-1 hashes of, 6,000 plus known good ROM dumps and things like that. And there's actually tools in Mame where you have a board, you don't know what that board is. You say, God, I got this board from some junk pile. I don't know what it is. You dump one ROM from that, you run Mame ROM ident on it, and it'll tell you every match that it finds in the database. And that's really useful. That's very useful stuff. And this known good stuff, we know it's good because we boot it, it passes all the internal checks, the game runs, we're pretty confident that it's good. Now, it's not 100% perfect, but we try our best. The third goal is, as I said, I want to provide a universal emulation platform. And this is kind of my goal. I don't know that everybody on the team agrees with me on this, but I'm coordinating it, so I get to say that. Number 4 goal is we want to enable analysis of arcade hardware and software. I mean, we just saw the thing about Donkey Kong 2. That's really cool. And I'm super psyched to hear that he was using Mame to help debug that and work that. It's unfortunate that it didn't work exactly on the software as it did on the hardware. I'd really like that to be the case. But I think a lot of the emulation that we started with was, the goal was just to get it up and running. And there's a big difference between getting it up and running and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and getting it working, getting everything to work. And I'd like to get there. And I've been pushing people to get there. And there's subtle things. Like, did you know that most games don't actually run at 60 hertz? They run at 56.7789 hertz or 58.92 hertz. I mean, every game, hardware, platform, has different video clocks. They all run at slightly different frame rates. And man, people get pissed off because they're like, my monitor runs at 60 hertz. I want you to run the game at 60 hertz. And we say, well, I'm sorry, but the game didn't really run at 60 hertz. It ran at some off-read, and so you're going to get some offbeat scrolling. I'm sorry, but I'd rather be accurate than have perfect scrolling on your 60 hertz machine, because I'd rather have the timing of the game, which is more important to the gameplay, frankly, be more accurate. So being able to analyze the hardware, being able to get it more and more right, those are all important things to me. I say a 5th goal, and I kind of put it at the bottom, but really, I'd like to see these games exist beyond the hardware lifespan. I mean, we know, people at the show know that these games it takes a lot of dedication to keep these games up and running. And my hats are off to all those people out there who keep these things up and running. I have a few games at home. I got a Turbo Mini and a Mame, and those things are never working right. And every time I get it working right, the next time I power it on, something else screws up. And the fact that these guys bring them here and let them run, that's great. But there's only a handful of people in the world who are that dedicated, and it's getting smaller, and the hardware's getting harder to keep going. And really, I think the only long-term viable solution is to have something where you can emulate the platform and allow people to play Pac-Man in its original glory in the future, or Donkey Kong 2, or whatever comes along, So since this talk's supposed to be about what keeps you motivated and how do you stay motivated and that kind of thing, little tips at the bottom. So tip number 1 is define and understand your goals. So if you're going to work on a project, the first thing you want to do is really understand what's your project about. This is my attempt to really understand what my project's about. And I say preferably not fame or fortune. I think fame or fortune are great goals for work. I don't think it's a great goal for something you want to do for fun in your spare time. That's my opinion, but I think it's going to. I find it pretty challenging if there was an incentive about money, or if it was all about pleasing people. That's where it starts to get down the slippery slope. So what is Mame not? I think this is important to spell out too. It's not perfect. I'd love it to be, but I know more than anybody in this room probably just how many hacks and kludges are in the system and how much I'd really like it to be better. And so we try. We do the best we can. We're a limited resource. There's a few dozen active, probably a dozen active developers right now. People are always trying to make it better, gain new knowledge. We just do the best we can. Mame is not consistent. There are 100 people working on it. So nobody has the same opinion. There's no central authority. I coordinate, I don't rule with an iron fist. Sometimes I wish I did, though. We're also not consistent through the years. We change our minds. I'm okay with that. I'm not a person who believes that if you change your mind on something, you're a weak person. Sometimes new information comes to light. Sometimes you think that was a dumb idea. Why did I do it that way? It's really okay. It's not a means of playing free games. I don't believe that. And I know some people see it that way, and it's one of the big complaints I hear about Mame. I don't want it to be like that. We put roadblocks in the way of it being that way. People will do with it what they will. I can't entirely stop them, but we do our best to try and make sure that the purpose is clear for what we are. Mame is not a drop-in replacement for PCBs. So there are a lot of people who want to take an arcade cabinet and put a PC in it and run Mame on it and plug it into all their I/O and just have it work. That's a cool goal. I think that'd be kind of a cool offshoot project. That's not our project. Our project's not really about that. In part because I know there's a lot more to an arcade game than just how the games ran, but that's what our focus is. We decided that that's our focus early on, and so that's what it is. And it could be done, it could be taken in a different direction to expand beyond that, but we chose not to. We're also not a platform for enhancing the games. So a lot of people like to say, hey, make the graphics cooler, or run some cool filter on it to angle all the graphics because you're running on high-res things. No, not really. That's not really our bag. Now, that said, we've made some attempts to try and make it look more like an arcade monitor on your LCD, and they're somewhat cheesy. They work pretty well in some cases, but again, that's more like we'd rather it look like it looks on an arcade monitor than it looks on your LCD. But we don't really want to make it look better than it originally did. The games are as they are. We want to present them as close to as they are as possible. So that's my tip number 2 is know your boundaries. And knowing what isn't your goals is really important. So if you don't really know what you're not supposed to do, then any suggestion that comes along, it's very easy to suck that into your goals. You say all of a sudden, oh, shoot, I should do that. Or shoot, I should do that. Be willing to put up boundaries to what you want to do, because it's insidious. It gets into you. You're thinking, okay, I had this cool little project I was working on, and somebody made this suggestion. And I took it as my own. I made it my goal. I really want to do that. And now I'm kind of not enjoying working on the project anymore because I have to do this thing that I said I was going to do. I kind of fessed up to that. So back off from that. Try not to try to keep your boundaries solid on what you're doing if you're doing your own project. Complaints. Man, people are a bunch of whiners, aren't they? So I work on this project for free for many years. We give out the source code. Feel free to modify it or do stuff